So we're at the bottom.
Yeah, good morning. We are on the Haggah, the note in the bottom. Our main subject is the Egla Arufa. And in learning about that, from Tzemach Tzedek's Chassidic commentary on that mitzvah, we must grouped the Egla Arufa together with the goat that's cast away, Lazazel on Yom Kippur. And we juxtapose those two with the offerings, karbanis in general, specifically. These two are not offered in the temple. They're both associated with the backside. They're both associated with barren land, as opposed to the offerings in the temple that are obviously offered in the temple, slaughtered from the front, whose blood is offered on the altar. And the difference being, the carbon, the offering, is to redirect energy towards holiness. Energy represented in blood. It's where our life lives. It's where our life is. Whereas, therefore, the offerings atoned for unintentional sins, accidentally misappropriating energy in a negative direction, and we redirect it towards Hashem. Whereas the case of the Egla Arufa, as well as the goat that's thrown off Lazazel, it's for intentional sin, but not for the person who does the intentional sin. That person requires a tshuva or court or whatever the case may be. It's for the general population of Jews that are interconnected with each other and thus responsible for one another, so that there's no negative consequence from this misbehavior. There's no bad decree to ward off any negative decree. We give klipa its due and say, you belong here, and we're pushing you to that corner. And thus it's outside, it's the back. And then we talked about the difference between the goat versus the calf, the desert outside of Israel versus the Egla Arufa inside of Israel. Now in the note, we began to compare a middle ground here, which is the Parah Aduma, the red heifer. The red heifer is also to be done outside of the temple walls, but not at such a distance. It's in a mountain facing directly toward,
Still in Jerusalem.
still in Jerusalem, facing the temple, facing the Holy of Holies. Blood is sprinkled in that direction. It's slaughtered from the front, but it's somehow on the outside. So we began by quoting a Mishnah, and then the Bartanuda's explanation, in that what is kosher at the red heifer is invalid at the Egla Arufa and vice versa. So, right, slaughtering from the front is kosher at the red heifer, valid at the red heifer, and invalid at the Egla Arufa. Decapitation from the backside is valid for Egla Arufa, but invalid for Parah Aduma. Right? So they have this comparison, but then this distinction. So we started to explain that the red heifer also serves as an atonement. And it serves as a much greater atonement. It's an atonement for contact with death. So it's not atonement in the classic sense of a person sinned, he messed up. But rather it's an atonement in the sense of coming in contact with the highest form of impurity, which is death. As we explained on Friday, morning klipa, is inherently a death. Because klipa is, the analogy we use from Rabbi Steinsaltz, is a parasite, or the black market, which sucks the light out of its host. It sucks the life out of its healthy host. Tongue twister. That's the nature of klipa, that it siphons from holiness, but kills it in the process. And in many ways, the majority of impurities in Torah are in some way related to death, in some way or another. And the highest form of them being death itself. And that's what the red heifer does. It atones for that. And therefore, the fact that it's outside of the temple doesn't mean it's less than those offerings in the temple. On the contrary, its virtue is even greater. Because those offering in the temples, we explained, only atone for accidental sins. And thus, the kindness it elicits from Hashem in response to that is a kindness that's baked into the system. The system of Hashem lays out in which he interacts with his world, known in Kabbalah as the 10 spheres, 10 attributes of the divine. Amongst them is kindness and compassion. And that's baked into the system, that there are rules. A person messes up, he brings a carbon, he redirects his energy, and he's welcome back. It's part of the rules of divine interaction. But then there is interaction with death. And death really is outside of the divine purview of what's supposed to be. Death isn't supposed to be. When the world was created, there was no death. It's sin that brought about death, because inherently it's not supposed to be. It's the complete opposite of holiness. Holiness is life, God is life, and death is the opposite. So atoning for death, it isn't merely enough that a person reach Hashem's kindness as it's baked into the system. The person has to reach God beyond. He has to reach the author of the system, the master of that system. The analogy, again, we use from Rabbi Stanzels again is the father and son playing chess. And there are rules to the game. And if we, God forbid, mess up in the game, we lose. And the only way to fix that is not to ask the father to change the rules. We can't change the rules of the game. The only thing he could do is ask, Father, can we start again? And father says yes, because the whole reason I'm playing game is just to have a good time with you. So let's start again. That we can do. Because now you're not appealing to the game. You're not appealing to the system. You're appealing to the master of the system. You're appealing to the person with whom you're playing. So you're appealing to Hashem's compassion directly, not to the compassion that's baked into the system. This is where we left off on Friday. So then we are so let's go to 4 lines into the note after the parentheses with the citation. Now, Lefi, the reason why I elaborated on what he just says here in the line. The reason why the Red Heifer is outside of the temple,
But still in Israel.
is still in Israel, because there's elevation, as we'll see, as opposed to casting away. Right? Lefi Shaidea offer through the ashes. This is to elevate from below. There is an elevation, as opposed to the misbehavior of death, of murder, and the sins that are atoned for the castaway. There's no elevation there. On the contrary, it's to push away. When it comes to the ashes, there is an elevation. The kiddush mechatas, and then the water that we add to that ashes, or actually it's the reverse. First you put the water, then you put the ashes on top. But the water represents hamshachas mad, to elicit from Hashem a response from above to below. Kechol karbonis, and this is true of every offering. Hakrevim b'fnim, which is offered on the inside. A Jew offers himself up to Hashem, and Hashem responds.
So it's the ash, it's the water that's put down first, and then
In the bowl,
ashes
yeah.
are spilled on
Yeah.
top of it.
Yeah. So shehem, which these offerings are, the kapara for atonement. Person offers himself up on the altar, as it were, and Hashem responds. But now on the contrary, the reason why the Red Heifer is outside of temple, there is an elevation. We're elevating, represented by the ashes. And there's a response from Hashem in kind. So by lasa g'dola yoser, the virtue of the Red Heifer is even greater than that of the offerings in the temple. Shenimshech mad, where the response from God from above is mipchinas noitzer chesed, is from the words and from the element, the level of noitzer chesed. Noitzer chesed is one of the 13 attributes of divine mercy. Hashem karach mechanon, noitzer chesed lalofim. The noitzer chesed. that attribute of the 13 attributes is this all 13 attributes in general, transcendent compassion of Hashem, which is why Hashem tells us to Moshe Rabbeinu, when the people sin, Hashem says, you want to make it work? Take this formulation, you read this, you touch me at the deepest level, and there's atonement. This is when we get the revelation of the 13 attributes, when the people mess up completely. So the response from Hashem that comes from above in response to the elevation of the red heifer is the transcendent kindness associated with the 13 attributes, and specifically the attribute of Notzer Chesed. Now he's going to give a little geography, Kabbalistic geography. The Chachma Slima, the Arach Anpin, which are ways of saying divine transcendence as they parallel the human experience of the subconscious. Something like that. Anyway, Shalamayla, which is this is far beyond Mimad, from the level that Hashem responds to Zah, the level of Zah, which is the level of, remember we talked about this on Shabbos, the long face versus the short face.
Yeah.
This is what he's talking about. The short face is the level of divine that's manifest within the system of creation, and the long face represents the transcendent. That's what he's talking about here. And this divine kindness that's built into the system is the response to the offerings that are brought in the altar, in the temple. And this is in contrast to the kindness of Hashem that's elicited in response to the red heifer, that's divine transcendence. Therefore, this is why the red heifer can atone or cleanse for the death of coming in contact with, the impurity that comes for coming in contact with death. Which is beyond and much lower than simply misappropriated energy. The contrary is death of energy. Misappropriated energy can be redirected. That's the offering in the temple. But death is completely detached. And therefore, the fact that the offering of the temple, the offering of the red heifer is outside, is not to indicate that it's lower than the offerings in the temple. It's the contrary, it's higher. Because it elevates and therefore reaches within the divine on a much greater level. It elevates the complete cutoff, death, because it reaches to the very depth of Hashem himself, the transcendent, as opposed to misdirected energy that's being redirected in an offering.
So in the temple, you can't atone for death, but outside the temple you can.
That's it. That's it.
They don't sprinkle inside the temple. Or they do.
The ashes, you mean?
Yeah.
No. On the outside facing towards the temple.
Well, that's the procedure for burning it. But I mean, when you actually do when the corn actually
Unless something in the temple is impure, you wouldn't do that.
Oh,
Because someone who's
That's
impure
right.
by death wouldn't be in the temple.
would be in there in the
That's right.
first place.
Unless something happened to have gotten impure there, then you would have to bring it in. Otherwise, it's done outside. Yeah. Rambam describes that like this window,
Yeah, right.
and people would walk,
Put their hands in or something.
and people would stand outside, and then they would
Right.
sprinkle. So you knew every day at 9 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, in the weeks leading up to Pesach or Sukkot, you can show up at this corner and then you get sprinkled. And had people designated at a very high level of purity to manage those those stations. Okay, this is not true of all other offerings. It cannot atone for complete disconnect from death. It can only atone for misappropriated energy. And therefore, this is why the red heifer is done outside 3 camps. That's the definition. That's the way it's described in the temple, in the desert. Ella, but even though he's outside, because he's elevating something that's been completely detached, nonetheless, the kohen miskaven. Miskaven means like he pays attention to direct his heart and his attention. The roya and sees the opening of the chambers of the temple. As he sprinkles the blood. So even though he's on the outside, he's redirecting something that's outside, completely outside, to be in. So as opposed to the Egla Arufa, and as opposed to the Sarah Shalech, which is not to redirect that which is outside to become back in. It's redirect outside to be away from us. cast out. Goodbye. We don't want to know you. The red heifer is from the outside, but redirecting it toward the in,
And there's a
which gives it
bridge-
therefore much greater value.
There's the bridge that connects the,
Yep,
the area of the red heifer and the temple,
that's correct.
kind of linking.
So Kumavor, this idea that the red heifer, that's right, there's a link. Even though you're outside, there's a connection.
It could
quite
be
literally.
same word.
There's a line. There's a line of connection from the
Some-
inside all the way to the
some
outside.
Spiritual relationship
Yeah,
with that bridge.
The line of connection there, yeah.
Yeah.
Kumavor Begeres HaKodesh Hanal, and now this is explained by my grandfather, says the author. It's my grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, in book 4 of Tanya. The Gamkin is Bar Etzlein B'Makam Acher, as well as I've addressed this as well in other areas. Lefichach, therefore, Hi Kisheda B'Shchita Dafka. This is why the red heifer specifically is to be offered with the proper slaughtering. Shiminat Savar, which is from the front of the neck, K'chol HaKarbanos, like all other offerings. Shemaitzim Damam, that we extract the blood from the offering. Umayla Maila, and it's elevated above Be'elakus, into godliness Keniskela Il, as mentioned before. We mentioned before the reason why the offerings in the temple you slaughter from the front is because we're redirecting a face-to-face connection with God. Remember we said this, right? In holiness, it's face-to-face with God, and in Klippa, it's the backside. We use the analogy of a person paying 2 bills, one paying a tax bill or paying a parking ticket, versus paying someone that you want to pay. Someone you want to pay, you smile, you're happy, thank you so much for your service. A tax bill, you don't want to know the guy who's cashing the check. You never want to see him. It's the same money, but you never want to see him again. Never want to see him. So it's
or a parking ticket.
or a parking ticket. I don't want to know who's cashing it. Don't see me. Don't talk to me. That's Klippa. Hashem says, here's what you got because you need to exist. So here, but I don't want to know you. So that's the castaway bill. That's like the Egla Arufa, and the castaway goat is like the tax bill. We throw it out there and say, you belong there and stay in your corner. We don't want to know you. Goodbye.
I don't want to think about you.
I don't want to think about you again ever. So it's backside, and therefore it's slaughtered from the back. Whereas the offerings in the temple are slaughtered from the front. Because we're redirecting toward Hashem, so it's face to face. So the same thing is true of the red heifer. It's also slaughtered from the neck. It's also to redirect to be face to face with Hashem, but coming from a much deeper negative, coming from death, and not just from misappropriated energy as it is in the temple. So it's even greater, and therefore it's also face to face. And that's therefore the slaughtering and the extraction of blood to sprinkle is the same as an offering in the temple.
So the instructions for using the ashes from the red heifer, one of the instructions is that it has to be outside the camp.
The preparation. Okay, so let's get it clear because we're confusing different parts of the procedure. There's one part of the procedure which is to prepare the ashes.
Yeah.
Now that's when we take the red heifer. It actually starts in the temple. It walks across this bridge outside the temple. There it's slaughtered while it's facing the temple, and they sprinkle blood from there while it's facing the temple.
Where is the
Down the Mount of Olives.
Where is the flesh burnt? Where is the
The Mount of Olives, where it's slaughtered,
and then
cross
burnt
outs,
in the same place.
and it's burnt there on this huge mound of
Like wooden
then-
pyre.
huge wooden pyre, and then all that ashes is stored for safekeeping. And whenever you need to, you add it to this. You need to the fresh water, as the halacha describes exactly how that water has to be fresh.
Ceremonious,
Sorry,
big ceremonious thing, or to gather the water. Or
Yeah,
not
the gathering of the
ceremonious,
water
but
itself is a whole
very,
procedure.
specific
doing the wrong
rules.
thing is can ruin the water. That's correct.
Yeah.
And then the water and the ashes are mixed, and then it's sprinkled on the person. So the sprinkling of the person can be any day of the week, and could be 20, 30, 50 years after they burnt it, because the ashes are held for safekeeping till the next one.
Are
So it
they
could be
not-
years and years and years until they burn another
They're
one.
not supposed. Isn't there supposed to be in the
That's right. And they have to keep, and for safeguard, they have to keep a jug in the temple. It's correct. At least one bit of the ashes have to remain.
Probably with the mana.
That's correct.
I
That's
know.
correct. They're both not just to store together, but it's a very similar thing where Hashem
Right,
says,
right.
keep it forever.
There's a memorial.
That's
of
correct.
that.
That's correct. That's correct.
Well, I mean, ashes don't like expire or decay really.
That's right. They retain, they stay fresh.
Right.
Yeah.
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 There's always what's it called like charcoaly like.
Yeah. See, so this also added to that, which is we talked about how the ashes represents the elevation and the water represents the Hashem's response.
from above to below?
Yeah, the reason why the ashes stay fresh is because they're completely sucked out of any moisture. Because moisture is life. So the ashes themselves are like the death.
Uh-huh.
They're completely lifeless.
Is that the?
That's from below to above. So all we have left is ashes. We have nothing left, but we're offering it to you. And in response, life gets poured in, the water. It's actually called mayim chayim. It's called living water. Right? It's the response from Hashem is even the ashes, that's nothing left. Granting you life and water, holiness. So that's doesn't say that here, but it would seem correct to me to fit into what we're talking about. Yeah, therefore the offering of these red heifer is slaughtered from the front, just like the offerings in the temple, because it's all about the face-to-face reconnection with Hashem. Aval barifa, but to decapitate the red heifer, hipsula would be invalid. Shamachurayim, because the backside is where negative energy siphons its life, as we described above. And therefore, to slaughter the red heifer, which is all about reconnecting face-to-face with Hashem, to do so by decapitating it from the back would undermine the whole purpose. But when it comes to the calf, the Egla Arufa, where there the intention is to give the negative force its due and say, be good riddance. So therefore you have to specifically decapitate it. Because that's where they get their energy. Negative energy gets it from the backside. But to slaughter the animal face to face by an Egla Arufa Yipsula would be invalid. Because that's not the proper way. You want to pay klipa its due and say good riddance, and don't do it face to face, because face to face is an invitation to come into our lives. And the point is to leave. And therefore it's decapitation. So Nimtzis Omer, the result of all this is we conclude with like a small recap that Tzemach Tzedek does for us. Shalosh Midas Bekarbanas. We have 3 categories of offerings. Aleph number 1, Karbana Shebifnim, offerings that are inside the temple. Habayim Lakapara, which come to atone. Keniski Lila, as mentioned above, they come to take energy, represented by blood, that's been misdirected in the wrong direction. Our animal soul that lives in our blood went the wrong way. We have to redirect it by offering the animal's blood on the altar. And therefore it's in the temple. Unintentional. Yeah. Bays number 2, that's category 1. Class 2, Hasori V'Hagola, Egla, the goat that's cast away in Yom Kippur, and the Egla Arufa, where we decapitate the head. Shaboyim B'chutz, both of which are offered outside, Litin Yenika L'Chitzonim, in order to give klipa, give the negative forces that's due, let them have their life, Lahasa Ketrugim, so that they don't cause us to have a negative impact, to remove any negative decree that might come as a result of this misbehavior, because all Jews are interconnected. So the person who did their intentional sin, they'll have to do their offering, they'll have to do their teshuvah, they'll have to go through trial or whatever they need to do. Because all Jews are interconnected, and this negative reality exists within us, we have to acknowledge its existence, give it its due, and say, leave us alone. And that way we remove any negative decree that might come as a result.
They put it in the desert where it cannot keep sucking.
That's correct. We cannot keep, it can't, it's cutting the parasite out. So Gimel in class number 3 is Para Aduma, is the red heifer. She Gam Kim B'chutz, which is also outside. Avalinyana, but its idea is not to cast it away. So it's done outside, but its content is more similar to, its idea is more similar to Kabayar Kabbanis Nasim B'fnim, like the offerings that are done in the altar, in the temple. So even though it's outside, its objective is to do elevation just like those offerings in the temple. But Adrab, on the contrary, he the red heifer is even greater than the elevation of the offerings in the temple, because the offering in the temple only atone for misappropriated energy in unintentional sin, whereas the red heifer atones and cleanses even death itself, which is a complete cutout, and therefore it's on the outside but facing inward. And as the Alter Rebbe writes in the above-mentioned citation, Tzemach Tzedek earlier said that my grandfather, that's the author of the Tanya, writes about the subject of the red heifer, and there he writes too, Shelakach nimshel misas sadikim leparaduma. This is why the death of the righteous are compared to the paraduma. This is from the fact that the Torah juxtaposes the law of paraduma with the story of Miriam's death. And our sages tell us, because the death of the righteous atoned for the worst of things, just as the red heifer does. And that's why they're put together.
Oh,
They both have to have that effect of elevating even the most distant place. That's the power of a tzaddik.
So when we go visit the cave of the righteous soul,
Yeah,
that's why we go.
because it's the tzaddik has the faith in the Jew even when he's ashes. Like that's almost Ayavashis, the story of the dry bones. We read about it when we went to Torah. We read about the dry bones.
Yeah.
Guy's got nothing left, just ashes. But the tzaddik has faith to restore him, like the paraduma. Because they atone for even the intentional sins. And this is not the case with ordinary. Excuse me. It's not the case with ordinary offerings that only atone for unintentional sins. Ayin Sham, see there in more detail. Thank you. Where Yalter explains in more detail how the paraduma, the red heifer, is similar to and associated with the passing of the righteous, specifically Miriam, as he describes there. So this then gives us a Hasidic framework to the mitzvah of Egla Arufa, and God willing, tomorrow we'll get back to the Gemara and we'll see the halacha of how Egla Arufa plays out, and we'll keep all this in mind, and we'll see how perhaps the halachic ideas match what we described here, because here we discussed the fact that it's a goat, the fact that it's from the backside, and the fact that it's outside. But perhaps there are more laws that maybe we can see how they fall in line with everything we've been learning here.
My mind is kind of mushy, but how does the finding the body of a murdered person, isn't that part of it?
That's what we're talking about here, yeah.
Yes.
That's the decapitated calf we're referring to is the
Was it a
ceremony.
decapitated donkey?
No, the decapitated donkey is a unique law of redeeming the firstborn donkey.
Oh,
Can I ask you about that?
Yeah. It's not an offering in the same way.
It's not an offering.
It's remind me, what's the procedure? You either have to redeem it
He has to redeem it, or otherwise he has.
or otherwise decapitate. Otherwise decapitated, yeah. I
Oh,
wonder
so
if it's
it has to be-
associated with this actually. I wonder if it's connected, yeah. It's good.
It's not an offering, so maybe that's.
a different
what
law
was
than
played.
this.
okay, I mean, so maybe I got it confused, so when a murdered body is found and nobody knows who it is and who
That's when they
did
do
it,
this decapitated calf.
decapitate a calf,
Yeah,
and the
by
fact
that's correct.
it's a total decapitation.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I got confused with the donkey
Yeah.
breaking the neck.
I
of
actually
it.
forgot about that, but this, you know what? There's probably an association there. Yeah,
Like you're supposed to break the neck of the donkey. You're not supposed to actually
yeah,
chest it from the back.
yeah.
What do you do with it now? Burn it?
It's probably.
Sorry,
What do you do with the cow? Or the donkey? Do you burn it now?
yeah, I think they buried. We're gonna get the Gemara is gonna go through all the laws, but I'm pretty sure he buried on the spot,
Huh.
and then they leave a mound, and because you're not allowed to work in that spot anymore.
The donkey or the calf?
The calf,
Cat
The
either,
calf.
but
Oh,
big cat.
I think they're both buried actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably similar for both of them.
Well, we'll have to wait for the Gemara to give us the exact details.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful day, Eden. Sorry.
The firstborn is probably also to appease for the negative forces as well, no?
Yeah, I wonder. He's talking about breaking the neck. Hey, we'll have to. Yeah.
Okay.
Have a wonderful day, Eden.
Okay, thank you.